Job protection. It feels like a universal good, right? I mean, we all want to feel secure at work. But what if that exact safety net is secretly burning billions of dollars? Today, we're exposing an invisible economic drain, one that literally bleeds a nation's wealth dry. And the crazy part? It happens completely in secret.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Does making it harder for a boss to fire you actually protect you? Common sense screams, yes, obviously. Your livelihood is secure, your family is safe, and society as a whole is more stable. That's the accepted wisdom pretty much everywhere. It just feels right. But a major economic study looked at the actual hard data. And the results, well, they kind of slap common sense right in the face. The accepted answer is completely wrong. Making it harder to fire people doesn't just protect jobs. It acts as a massive friction. Actually, scratch that. It's more like putting up a brick wall. It locks workers into the wrong places. It stops companies from growing. Well-intentioned job security can actually trigger a huge financial leak. It damages the very foundation of the entire economy, making absolutely everyone poorer over time.
So, let's get into Section 1, Finding the Invisible Drain.
How do we actually see this damage? We have to measure the invisible. We have to look at the math right behind the factory doors. Now, economists measure this invisible drain using something they call the gap. Forget the complex academic formulas, the concept is incredibly simple. Imagine a worker generates $100 of value an hour, but their wage is only $20. That massive $80 difference, that's the gap. In a perfect world, workers easily move to jobs that pay closer to their true value. But when a company can't freely hire or fire, this gap absolutely explodes. Workers get trapped. And every single time that gap widens, society's total wealth just evaporates.
This infographic brilliantly illustrates the problem. Take a look at that green area. That isn't just abstract data. That is real wealth vanishing into thin air. It's money literally burned simply because hiring and firing is no longer free. The bigger the friction in the labor law, the bigger that green zone of lost wealth gets. It's pure, unfiltered inefficiency, visually captured right there.
So, how much money are we really talking about here? A lot. 0.5%. The study found that fixing this gap by just one single unit across the board has a massive impact. It would instantly boost the entire economy's total value added by 0.5%. 0.5% of an entire nation's economy, just by allowing workers to move freely to where their labor is actually needed most. It is a staggering amount of hidden money.
Moving to Section 2, the Chilean factory's hardcore test. To prove this, researchers needed a real-world laboratory. They needed a country that suddenly and aggressively changed its firing laws. And they found the perfect test subject, Chile, in the 1980s. So in 1982, Chile had very low firing costs. That's our baseline. Then, boom. In 1984, the government suddenly passed a new labor law. If you fired a worker without a specific behavioral cause, you owed them up to 5 months of severance pay. Economic hardship for the factory, no longer a valid excuse. Then, in 1991, they doubled down. The maximum severance jumped to an incredible 11 months of pay.
The contrast here is sharp and pretty dramatic. Pre-1984, a factory could easily downsize during a bad month. Firing was easy and it was cheap. But post-1984, downsizing became an absolute financial nightmare. Letting a worker go became incredibly hard and brutally expensive. The friction in the job market was basically cranked up to the absolute maximum.
Section 3, Data Slap. Who ruined it? Now, we're tracking the gap. Remember, that difference between the value a worker creates and the wage they get paid. We know the rules changed, but did the economy actually bleed? Before the 1984 law, sure, there was a gap, but it was manageable. After the law made firing incredibly expensive, how massive did this invisible leak actually get? Get ready for this. It is truly anti-common sense. 1. Entire year. The gap completely exploded. The difference between a worker's value and their actual wage skyrocketed. It grew to equal a full year of their salary. Think about that for a second. For every worker locked in the wrong place by these laws, the equivalent of a year's worth of wages was simply lost. Lost in pure economic inefficiency. And this happened for both blue-collar and white-collar workers. The wealth destruction was absolute.
And the visual proof here is undeniable. Check out this bar chart. In the baseline years before the reform, the gap is pretty stable, right? But the period immediately after the 1984 law passed, the gap absolutely surges. The moment job protection spiked, the invisible drain spiked right along with it. It's a direct, undeniable hit to the system.
But hold on, let's pause. Let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Was this really the labor law's fault? What if the 1980s were just a terrible time for Chilean businesses overall? What if the whole economy was just crashing, and this massive gap was just a side effect of a broader, uncontrollable disaster?
Well, that counterargument gets completely destroyed by the data in this table. This is the ultimate proof. If the whole economy was crashing, the gap for every single input would surge. But look at this. While the gap for labor skyrocketed, the gap for raw materials stayed totally flat. Electricity? Actually dropping. Factories could still buy and adjust materials and power freely. So those gaps did not move. The damage was isolated entirely to labor. The job protection laws absolutely, directly caused the leak.
Bringing us to Section 4, Perfect Conclusion, Fatal Flaw.
The data is incredibly persuasive. It's a stunning look at the hidden costs of well-meaning laws. But, as objective explainers, we have to look at the blind spots too. We have a perfect mathematical conclusion here, but a fatal flaw in the perspective. Don't get me wrong, this research is brilliant. It's the very first to measure absolute economic loss using actual factory floor data. It's a massive breakthrough, but the data only measures money. It completely ignores the psychological value of a worker feeling safe. It ignores the stability of a family. It also only looks at manufacturing. It completely ignores the service sector. And it might totally miss secret under-the-table wage cuts negotiated between bosses and workers. We're looking at cold, hard efficiency here. We are definitely not looking at human emotion.
Which leaves us with a profound, kind of uncomfortable choice. The invisible drain is absolutely real. Job protection destroys economic efficiency, and it burns society's wealth. But is that a price we're willing to pay? Are we willing to sacrifice our society's maximum financial growth just to guarantee a human being feels safe in their job? It's the ultimate trade-off. Definitely think about that the next time you hear a debate about labor laws. We'll catch you on the next explainer.